We get right into it. How are you doing, Josh?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Thanks for working with me on the time here.
Yeah, no problem. So are you down in Miami right now?
No, I'm back home.
Okay,
Been back home. I got back on Tuesday night.
nice. What days of the event did you go to? Because you went down to RacketX 2025, which was the second annual event of how would you describe RacketX?
RacketX. It's kind of everything you could possibly ask for if you're into racket sports. They have like pretty much just about everyone represented. Um, didn't really know what to expect. Um, I First of all, I gotta credit Chuck Tang for bringing my attention to it. And by the way, he's somebody that I think you may want to interview in the not too distant future because some exciting things going on that I'm kind of involved with him as well. But yeah, he told me about it and had been thinking of going. Couldn't make it, but I just decided we'll go check this out. They had a thing for clubs, so decided I'd go on behalf of the Mandan Tennis Center, and it was, yeah, 3 days of just all day doing stuff, tons of sessions. Um, there's like on court stuff, uh, tons of vendors also. So it's just, yeah, I can could
Did,
talk plenty about it.
yeah,
Whatever you
did
want to know, whatever you
yeah.
want to know, yeah.
First, did you buy anything when you were down there?
Oh, well, I mean, at RacketX or the
Yeah,
Miami Open?
well,
Well, at
like
RacketX,
RacketX.
okay, RacketX to start with. I didn't buy anything at the time because of kind of like limited, like what they had for vendors and some of its larger scale stuff. But I was given a really good grip by overgrip by a brand that's called Rich Sport.
Rich
And,
Sport.
I would check them out. They do kind of cool uh, like grips and other like little tennis accessories. It's run by a couple of ladies I met and had a good visit with, and really cool looking stuff. Um, Gonna keep playing with it, see
Yeah.
how it holds up. So
For the Mandan Tennis Center, that obviously intrigues me a little bit. Just because it would be cool to eventually build an indoor tennis facility. I think that's a really cool thing to do. What takeaways or yeah, I guess one question before that, did you go all 3 days?
I did,
Okay.
yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway from the tennis facility standpoint, from the vendors down there?
Yeah, so there was maybe some sessions I didn't catch on this, but I think they'll be recorded, and I don't know if they might even be public. So I'd recommend checking out a lot of this stuff. But I think a lot of kind of what they've been saying is like if you're doing things that are membership driven, or like you have facilities with memberships, like making sure to kind of make your place kind of stand out in some place that you want to go and be a member and be a part of. And I think that is something that just looking at the Mandan Tennis Center, that is something that we can probably, I think we're doing well with it, but we can certainly improve on. Uh, and also, there's also like looking at, there's a lot of talk about how do you bring these different sports together. And that a lot of times now today, what you're actually looking at with building facilities are, it's not just one thing, not just tennis, not just pickleball, paddle, squash. So there's actually kind of and this is something I really liked and was kind of curious how it would go is like, well, what's the sort of feelings about all the sports being together in one place? And you know what? It was a lot more. We certainly like with tennis and pickleball. Yeah, we hear the okay. Some things you don't like them being in one place or the other, but I actually think there's a lot more talk about you can get into different sports. You can kind of play all of them and enjoy them. So I think that was something encouraging. Um,
Did they
yeah,
give any strategies for a club to be inclusive to all different sports, or is it just like, oh, we have to have all these different things? Because like obviously the Mandan Tennis Center, they have pickleball lines, they have tennis lines, so you can play both of those. They have a ping pong table, I suppose, so you could do a little table tennis. Could they accommodate to squash, paddle, these other sorts of sports?
yeah. So those are kind of interesting because they do require very different facilities that you kind of have to start with. Uh, but what I think they're talking about, a lot of it is like, okay, we have these things here. Maybe you start playing this and then you see, oh, well, we've got this too.
Mm,
That looks fun. You could try it.
yeah.
And it's kind of the idea of, I think there is like what they kind of classified pickleball and paddle as gateway sports. And then I think you might call them like apex sports would be things like tennis and squash.
Mm,
That those do require more skill and they're probably, like they do take longer to master. But yeah, I think it was just having different people at your facility or, some that here was actually one of the more interesting things they said, which is have people at your facility that don't play some of the sports that you offer because you're going to get a very different perspective. Because I mean, it's great. You do obviously want, and I would say need people that do, but you're going to hear different things than maybe somebody that just does that all the time.
right.
So I think that was actually one very kind of interesting takeaway. I hadn't really considered before, but that was one. I also think here was another. I don't have the guy's name offhand, but one of the club summit sessions that I went to, there was one of them was for a pretty new facility that was kind of a sort of semi-public, semi-private deal. It was called the Fort, and I think one of the things he said was our biggest competition is the park. The park is free and people will accept kind of either maybe mediocre to poor conditions because of that. What is it you can give that cannot? And that was something that I hadn't really thought about either, but I think it is one that it does deserve a lot more consideration. Like if you're looking at making a new facility, how is it better than the park? What's going to stand apart? And I think if you do things well enough, people will come to it, and yeah, you can skip the wait.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then you also visited some content creators down at that event as well. What was your takeaway from the content creators and their presentations?
yeah, so that was probably one of the most interesting sessions. And if it's out there, I think I'm going to recommend you watch it and anybody else who's in that space. What you have is five pretty different people with, I think they cover fairly different segments of the, I guess, tennis content creation space. Uh, but they all kind of like they hit on sort of what has worked for them and what they're going after and sort of finding the thing that works for you and what you're interested in. And probably the other thing that stood out is for those that are looking at dealing with, branding and partnerships and that sort of thing, making sure that that's organically integrated into your content and that it's something that, you would actually use or want to do. So I think a lot of them said that some of the things not to do or is like, if you aren't somebody that's like, say, really into reviewing gear, don't like review something for a sponsor if you're not actually into it, or if that's not like, say, what your channel's about. Generally, you probably don't want to go off in that direction, just to try and make that work. Find a way to work it into your content. I think they also said that affiliate deals tend to also, maybe it's just for them, but that tends to be something that they stay away from.
Interesting.
But it probably depends too, like, if you're looking at these people, I think for the most of them, at least some of the bigger ones, like, I think where they're looking at, like, this is kind of their living, that's probably a different thing. But
yeah, are those 5 members? So some of those people that you went down and I guess watched and interacted with too. You got some pictures and talked with them as well. Are the Tennis Brothers, which is Felix Misker. I don't know exactly how you pronounce his name. Then you have Trey with Winners Only. Winston Dew, who has his own YouTube channel, and then who are some of the other ones that you saw down there? Schulman or something?
yeah, so Rachel Stuhlman,
Schulman?
she, I'm a little less familiar with her, but she, I think, does a lot of tennis media. You maybe will see her in some of like Patrick Mouratoglou's lesson videos. And I know she was doing some like Miami Open kind of coverage or correspondence, but she's pretty well known, and I think is kind of one of the original people to kind of be a tennis influencer or content creator. And then the other was Ian Westerman of Essential Tennis, who's probably like I think of all of them, I think he's been probably at the whole tennis content, probably more geared towards the instructional side for like 15 years. So
Did they talk at all about their income breakdown with where they make money, and are these guys doing it full time?
I believe that Rachel and Ian, that is essentially what they do. One of the things I talked to Ian about this because I was into, he and some of the other people affiliated with Essential Tennis used to do a show called Shankcast. It was a podcast. Kind of reminds me of some of the discussions in Backyard Tennis, actually. And I talked about Backyard Tennis with a lot of people, by the way.
Let's go. We love it.
And so I kind of said, well, what happened to Shankcast? And he said, essentially, it was a business decision that it wasn't driving a lot of traffic for the, effort that's being put in. The, I think return on investment maybe wasn't as what he was looking for on that. So I think it kind of depends on who it is. Maybe in that case, they're looking at like, I don't know if it's all ad revenue or the brand partnership type situation. That I think Rachel talked more about those are probably a big driver. Some of the others that I would say that are newer to it, I'm less certain on that. I think Winston is probably Winston and Trey are probably newer to it, and I don't remember if they might like have jobs outside of this, or they did at least until recently. I think I remember Winston saying something to that effect. And probably Felix is the most interesting case because he's somebody who's basically grown up as a uh, like a tennis content creator. Like since he was a kid, that Tennis Brothers channel has been, kind of following him, and now he's kind of shifted it towards, well, I do this, but I'm also on my journey to see if I can make it on tour. So that's kind of an interesting case. But yeah, I think it just varies. And you could see that there's sort of, I don't want to say it was like, there's some of them where it felt like, hey, this is maybe a little bit more fun. I mean, I think it to some extent is a job. Um, I think people like Ian and Rachel, that probably is kind of like what they do. So
Mhm.
it's very much a job. I think the people like Winston and Trey, this is something newer. Just kind of see what happens with it,
Yeah.
um, and Felix, I think that's probably the most unique one because that's like I'm doing this, but I'm also kind of living a let's see if we can make it on tour life. So
Yeah.
yeah, uh, but
It's
yeah, all very interesting perspectives.
yeah, it's interesting. I spend a ton of time on YouTube. Obviously, I make videos, for backyard tennis, but a lot of my time with just viewing and entertainment is spent on YouTube. I don't really watch like Amazon Prime or Netflix or these other things. I essentially just watch YouTube. Just YouTube and occasionally some ESPN on Saturday I'll watch MMA. But one thing that I've noticed on YouTube is golf content creation is massive and tennis content creation is like a small little like bubble. So I feel like it will reach its maturity in the future, but they're on totally different levels. But I think a lot of that is the storytelling amongst the tennis community. It just probably isn't quite there compared to golf, which is just these massive, massive names and millions of followers where non-golf people are watching their stuff. And I don't think tennis is broken through where they're capturing the non-tennis fan. Um, did they talk at all about that down there and what the future of tennis content creation could be or anything along the lines like that?
Absolutely. It's interesting you've mentioned golf because they very specifically brought up like the I think it was like the good golf deal that like I think that was sold recently for a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I think that they talked about is the like professional golf is more supportive of like content creators, that they actually have funding set aside for that purpose,
Mm.
and that that to invest in that. And I don't know that like professional tennis has done that to the same extent. And I think the other aspect of it is there is still like it's not as open at this time to like go some of these places. Like Felix, I think talked about, I want to do something. I think it might have been for like the Queens Club event, and it's like, I have this really great idea. Can we do this at your event? And it sounded like that, was not accepted, or it's much more difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think like with at least with some of these bigger events still, but yeah, they did talk about that, and I mean, it's clear like that is getting people like into these, into these sports, and I think they definitely have a role that I think can be, it is positive or can be, and hopefully, in the future we we see that continue and the support for that sort of thing grow.
Yeah. I think it's inevitable that the sport will eventually adopt it, whether it be a late adoption, but it's inevitable. I mean, the internet will always be there, at least for our lifetime. So, I mean, I just see it as an investment into viewership and eyes on the sport. You want more people to watch your sport because then your athletes and your organization does better. So I think it's just an obvious investment. It's just when are they going to realize that potential success? And maybe it's just because tennis is a little bit more conservative in their outlook and their mindset. It seems like that's kind of what it is. They're late adopters to pretty much everything. Um, so I think it will break through eventually. I do want to touch on what your interactions were like with these people. Did you have any opinions about them after? Because you got to go in like chat with them for a little bit and almost like a meet and greet of some sort, correct?
Yeah, yeah, I kind of joked about like the whole DMs IRL. You know what I mean? And as a side, no, I did not I did not try and get Morgan Riddle on the show. I didn't see her, but we'll keep trying.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, they all were very interesting people to visit with, and I think it was really good to just like kind of actually like you can just visit with these people like like just any of the other attendees. I think that was one of the coolest things about it. It kind of, I don't know if I want to say sort of normalized it and kind of showed everybody can be a part of a community and nothing's really too closed off. Um, yeah, for the most part, like I think I would say you could kind of visit with them and ask like what you want, and they were pretty receptive to it.
Mhm.
Um, like I think some of them, like I said, they probably would be. They did some of them maybe seemed a little more like. I think the people that kind of do this full time, like they're probably a little more professional about it and sort of have the. I don't want to say that they're like. It's not like media trained on how to answer some of it, but they kind of might be coming at it from. I think if you want to talk kind of the business side,
Yeah. They have
they're
their
probably.
angle.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that um, I think the some of those, like I mentioned, that are kind of newer to this, and maybe it wasn't always their thing. I think they really were, particularly interested in, like the stuff that I was talking about or had to say, especially Winston. I told him about backyard tennis and that what goes on and the idea of you enjoy putting out this match play and having playing different people. That's something I think both of you do. Um, and he actually had a lot of questions about what does the channel do, and then was really seeking kind of feedback on what do you like seeing on my channel, or what do you like about those videos about where I play the pro or somebody else like that. So it was interesting to see like, oh yeah, they're interested to know what the people who follow them have to say.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective, but I mean, it is your audience, and if you are generating any sort of benefit, whether it be income or a sponsorship deal or whatever, it's good to kind of know what the viewers want, because then you can give what the viewers want. And one thing that at least I experience, been making videos for 3 years, is you don't always hear opinions and feedback. You see view count and like count, stuff like that, but you don't always get feedback on every video, and the feedback that you get are from probably the closest people. It's not like that far reach where, maybe this event for someone like Winston, you get to see some diehard tennis fans from around the world, and it's a good opportunity for him to, you know, get a genuine ask of what people prefer and what they actually like. Because although the numbers do show one thing or another, I also think, do some market research and just some personal anecdotes also helps as well. But transitioning to the Miami Open, did you get to see some matches from the tournament down there?
Yeah. I went, let's see, I got there on Tuesday, and then kind of the first full day one is Wednesday. So I went Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I did a night session on Sunday. They had a special session for us RacketX VIPs. That was
Let's go.
pretty cool to see parts of the stadium that I didn't get to otherwise. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Just basically, I spent all day those first 3 days there, and it's really fun. It's the first, I would say, like real kind of tennis event that I've gone to.
Mm.
I've been to, prior to this, I've been to places where they're held. I've been to Newport, the Tennis Hall of Fame, and played there, and Indian Wells as well, but not during the tournaments for either of those. So yeah, seeing just, I don't know how to put it, just like the whole production that they put on at this place is pretty incredible. Yeah, just ask away about it because
I want to touch on what I asked before, and I said, did you buy anything from RacketX? And you brought up the tournament. So did you buy something from the tournament?
yeah, I bought some a few tournament souvenirs. I know it's kind of, I don't know if it's silly or whatever, as an older person to get the big tennis ball and get it signed, but
Yeah,
I had to do that.
yeah,
Hadn't done that. Did not do that when I was younger, so I gotta do the big tennis ball at least once. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
I
Um,
love the big tennis ball. Those things are sweet.
yeah. Well, I got like I didn't get the biggest possible one because I knew I'd have to take this back. So there's like a nice kind of medium one that I've got. Um, so that and a couple of the small tournament towels and just a few other like little things.
Did you get some autographs?
I
From who?
did.
Who was the biggest name?
Okay, so I'll give you the list here that I can remember offhand. So first one I got was the first, I guess, tennis autograph ever comes from Ashlyn Kruger when she won against Rabakina, who is one of my favorite players in the WTA, and I would have kind of liked to have gotten that signature too, but Ashlyn was very nice, and uh, that's something I'll comment on as well. Is just it is interesting to see how the players kind of conduct themselves with their fans after wins or after practice. Um, Unfortunately, the guy that beat your guy Nori, I was going to try and get one of their signatures, but I think it was Bu is his last name, from China. Got his, and then kind of my personal favorite one, because he's a guy I've been following a lot lately, is Giovanni Impeccia Pericard,
Okay. Yeah.
and he was great. I got it at practice, but I watched him play doubles, and he was like willing to pose for photos and sign for people like outside of the gated area, just anybody who wanted to. He was great. Probably the biggest, I guess, biggest name that I got was Casper Ruud. So also another person who was great with with the fans.
Yeah,
So,
Grand Slam finalist in multiple events. So
yep.
yeah, he's a massive name. Did What was the best match to watch, or were there any matches that you're like, wow, that was a great match, or I really enjoyed my time at this specific match?
So day one, I would say I kind of went bigger with the stadium tickets for a day, and I think the highlight of that, I got real good seats. So you got a Monfils match first, and then the Curios match with McDonald,
Hmm.
and that was just great seats. It's seeing them like play. I'd always wanted to see him play, and him getting a win after however long it's been. I think it was more than like 2 or 3 years since he
Mhm.
won a singles match. It was really that was a really good one. And then the other, so here's one thing that I think is probably a bit more unique about Miami, or you're going to see it more. What I like is that the people in Miami are really, they seem to really be into their tennis,
Hmm.
um, and just probably their sport in general. But anytime you've got like the South American players out, there's just people that are way into it. They go wild. So when Joao Fonseca played that first round match with Lerner Tien, that was, yeah, it was just wild in the stadium. And I was kind of up there where a bunch of them were, and just yeah, the chants like throughout the whole match, and thankfully he won. um, and because that was really a fun one just to be at, and a good match too. But yeah, I kind of got to see basically sort of every level and sort of every sort of distance you could watch at this event to kind of get a sense of what's good and where you want to be, and all that. So
What did you prefer, the big stadium courts or the smaller outer courts?
okay, so this is kind of an interesting one to judge, and I would say that it's really cool when you can be up close. So if you get like like a good grandstand seat, like I think that one's kind of ideal. Um, but like or whatever it is, court one, and then they got like another stadium outside. You watch maybe when it's not packed, and you can kind of get wherever you want a good spot. Like that's really fun. Um, when it or one other one, like I thought sometimes like these sort of outer courts too, like they're still pretty decently sized, and the matches on them are pretty good. Like um, just like watching a doubles match up pretty close with the Impet Para card. That was like cool because you don't get to see doubles a whole lot, and you probably aren't going to get that on stadium except for maybe finals. But yeah, but when it comes to the stadium, yeah, it just sort of depends on where are you, and what kind of experience you're getting from there. So like the first day, I got not quite courtside, but just like pretty much court level, slightly above, about 5 rows up, and that's really good. Like I didn't want to leave that. I could
Yeah.
have stayed there all night.
Were
Yeah,
were the were the chairs comfy? Like, was it comfy
yeah,
seats? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, so there's kind of different ranges of it. Um, and then like another night, like the Fonseca one, that wasn't quite as up close. It was a little more in the corner, but still pretty decent like spot. So you can kind of see you got a full action view, but you're not too far away. Then there's kind of like what I think they call the 300 level seats. Um, Not ideal. I'll just say that for tennis. That is worth mentioning that this stadium, it isn't totally dedicated to tennis. It's where the Miami Dolphins play, and I don't know what else they do there. So it's not necessarily optimized for tennis viewing, and a lot of it's actually not even like it's kind of closed off, and you don't even see it. But yeah, but then there's like for that VIP night, it was maybe a little more off to the side, but you get to be in like some cool lounges and watch from there. So it just sort of depends on what you know what view do you like, or what kind of experience are you getting out of it.
Yeah.
That's
And maybe this will be the last question to kind of finish up. I heard this on I can't remember the podcast name. It's not Andy Roddick's, but it's with Isner.
nothing major.
Yeah, Nothing Major podcast. Isner, Sock, those guys, and they're debating what tournament would you rather win if you were a professional player? Would you rather win Miami or would you rather win Indian Wells?
Mm,
And in the consensus was different. They said that in Miami, because the taxes are lower, there's essentially no state income tax,
yep.
that you win a lot more money if you win in Miami because of Florida. But then in California, the Indian Wells is considered the fifth major, but you get taxed like crazy because it's California. What's your opinion and thought on, and what would you rather win if you were a tennis pro?
Okay, so this is interesting because I've been to both places. I'll have to, now after doing this, I'm thinking about kind of do a proper sunshine double one of these years. But yeah, it's like, okay, growing up, I mean, like I always thought, okay, the having been to Indian Wells, like the facility and all of that, it's much better. Like it's probably a much better like for tennis place to hang out. It's pretty iconic, pretty well known. Um, Fantastic place to be, like no question. But then like I think about, okay, what do I always think about like when it comes to the matches and that, or just the tennis, and it's kind of like I have a lot more memories as like a viewer of Miami. Like I can remember, when Djokovic won his first Masters 1000, like back in 2007. It's like when they used to play the best of five. Um, I remember that, and or one of the matches I always just like put on like the highlights of, like fairly often, is that Federer Kyrgios one from 2017 when they played the three tie breaks.
Mm.
Or yeah, there's just I don't know. There's like it's like there's I feel like I can remember a lot more of the matches about Miami. Um, but yeah, it's tough. I think what I would say. Um, how it's like, you can have your career slam, or do you want the Olympic medal? I think calendar sunshine double. It's got to be up there.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's a massive accomplishment to win back to back,
Yeah,
in the States especially.
I think that's the yeah. I don't know. It's tough. That's the real goal. Calendar sunshine double.
Yeah, and I lied. I have one more question.
Oh, by all
So
means.
the winner of the tournament, who do you think? So the female side is set for the final. I believe the men are playing right now in the semifinal. I know Djokovic made the final. Who do you think's gonna win from, both sides, the men and the women?
I feel like Djokovic is gonna kind of surprise everybody, and this will be the comeback title
Mm-hmm.
for whatever it's been. I mean, obviously he's been doing great by I think most people's standards,
Right.
except maybe his own. But yeah, it's like I got to be the oldest person to win the a Masters 1000, or something like that. Yeah, I think he would be if he wins.
And then Sabalenka against
Yeah.
Pagula. Who do you think is going to win that one?
I don't know. It's tough for to call because I mean, I'm sure as you know, like doing your fantasy league and all this, it's very unpredictable right now.
Hmm.
But I feel like Sabalenka has
Yeah.
been pretty consistent.
Yeah. Sabalenka's
But
game is tough against Pagula's. But sorry, I cut you off. What?
no, no, I just think it's going to be good tennis this weekend. It'll be fun to watch.
Hmm.
Um, like fun to think I was just there and
Yeah.
seeing all this stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I know that spot now, and
Yeah.
I saw them. I'm trying to think if I saw any. I think I did see most of these people at one point or another. If they weren't playing, they were in practice or something. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a fun event. I'd also just say as an aside, I have to probably compare it, go to some more of them to compare it to, but they definitely have just like a lot of stuff out, like vendors, just promoting different things that they give you stuff and all these like fancy. It's I would say probably one thing with Miami, just kind of guessing on this, it's a lot more like there's kind of a nightlife to this one. I don't know if in like the Palm Desert, Indian Wells area, um, I don't know if that's the case quite as much, but it's like this is just where like people go out to like hang out on a Saturday night or Sunday night.
Mhm.
Any night. They're just out all the time. People are just out hanging out in Miami. It's a party. I don't know how else to put it, but it's a lot of fun. So you can. There's plenty to do, and in fact, at some points it was like I just kind of want to take some of this in, and I can take a little break from watching tennis.
Mhm.
But yeah, it'll be fun to trying to go to more stuff, compare it to some of the other events. I don't know, like what I'm sure they all offer something different, a different feel. I think one recommendation I would give for those that are looking at going to events, if you can give yourself an opportunity, I don't know, either to be there ahead of time or at a separate time to like experience the kind of place or the city when it's not in full event mode, just to kind of judge of like, okay, how do I feel about this place? Like with this one, I didn't have like a ton of time on that kind of except until towards the end. But it's like, well, I want to come back here now and kind of experience this. Whereas I've spent at least a week in Palm Desert and all of that, and it's like, okay, I know this is great and this is a good place to be. So I look forward to coming back here during the tournament because
Mhm.
I know my way around. I know what's good to do and all that. So
Mhm.
that would be one other like thing. If you're looking at making a trip, factor in where it is and make sure that it's something someplace that you can get around and you would enjoy being as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah, it was awesome hearing about the the content side in RacketX down in Miami, and also hearing your experience just at the Miami Open. I think that place, I think that's a sweet spot, and I want to go down there. I think that would be a cool trip, and especially that they pair it right along with the Miami Open, a big tournament in the United States, destination spot. I think it's a no brainer for maybe a future trip for me down there. So, Josh, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
yeah, absolutely.